Välkommen.
This is my good friend Manny, and this is how he lives. Like many young bachelors, his space is, well, quite minimalistic, especially the lighting. With only 2 bright spotlights in the ceiling, it's hard to create any kind of cozy mood. But we're going to change that. In this video, we are 3D printing a unique mood lamp for Manny, and we'll surprise him with it. Maybe he'll love it.
Wow!
Maybe he'll hate it. I don't even know what it's going to look like yet, but we're about to find out. So, we're designing for a specific space and individual. So obviously we have to think of his needs. Now Manny doesn't really have a specific interior style or a specific color scheme. He also doesn't study or read very much, so the lamp doesn't have to be functional in a traditional sense. What Manny really needs is a mood lamp. Something to enhance his space. Something that gives off ambient light when he's, watching Netflix and chilling. I want to make something bold and unique for Manny. A sculpture piece that draws attention and makes a statement. I have this idea of a black and red design with a topographical pattern. And I'm thinking that the light will seep through the surface. Kinda like a mini volcano. So in my mind I'm picturing this dramatic glow. Kinda like lava bubbling under the surface. And if we can make something like that, I think Manny's gonna like it. So let's make it happen. I started by modeling a fluid topography, aiming for an organic look with natural peaks and valleys. I raised the middle section to make room for the light bulb. Then I added thickness to the surface and extruded the sides to create a simple lampshade. But before moving forward, I had to test it. So I put the lampshade in the slicer, thinking there was a small chance it might print without supports. But I was very wrong. So the first test failed miserably. We're gonna need a lot of supports for this model to work. But since I'm not streamlining this design for production, I don't really care too much. Apart from can it print without supports, there are some other things I will be looking for in this initial test. I will mainly be looking for how the light shines through these holes, because that's the whole idea of this lamp, how the light interacts with this waffle pattern. The idea is that if we print the walls black and thick enough, we can control the light and direct it upwards. And we can get this dramatic glow. So I will also look for things like, do we need thicker walls? Can we control the light as I imagine? It's better to find errors and change the design early on in the process before I start modeling the rest of the lamp. But for now, let's just make some supports and finish the first test. I managed to keep the supports at 10% of the total filament usage, which I think is fairly good. When I started printing, I noticed that the bottom started to sag quite a bit, so maybe I was too stingy with the supports. But the bottom part won't be showing anyway, and as long as the overall structure is intact, the top layers should print nicely. So the initial test print went pretty good. The top layers had no issues at all. I printed this with draft settings with a really thick layer height, which is why we get these jagged stairs. But the real version is gonna look much smoother than this one. There was quite a bit of post-processing that had to be done, but it is what it is. So, I really think this shade has some potential. I really like how the light shines through this waffle pattern, and I think it resembles a volcano a little bit. Also, if the shade is lifted a bit, it almost looks like it's floating when the light shines underneath here. So I think I will make a base that accommodates this. It's definitely gonna be a unique piece and it's gonna be a pain to make the whole thing, but I think Manny's gonna like this. There is one thing that worries me a little bit, however. As you can see here from my light study, is that a normal light bulb might concentrate the light too much in a small circle or a small spot. And it's not distributed along this waffle pattern as I would like it to be. I really want to spread the light evenly across this topographical pattern. But to do this, we might either install some kind of diffuser inside the lamp, or we need a flat LED panel and not a regular light bulb. I also think the thickness of the grid might be too big. It's about 35 millimeters, and I think I'm gonna make one version where it's 15 millimeters, at least a little bit thinner, and we will see how that looks as well. Anyway, I have seen everything I need to see in this test, so let's design the rest of the lamp. I extended some of the topographic waves from the shade down into the base for a cohesive look. To maintain the floating effect, I designed the base to be slightly smaller than the shade, leaving a small gap for the light to escape. I struggled a lot with how I should attach the shade into the base. Eventually, I decided to make 4 pipe-like extrusions in every corner with threads in them. And then from the bottom, we'll have screws that will keep the shade in place. This way, we can also make sure the height is adjustable, so that we can better control how the light seeps through the gap, as we talked about before. Eventually, we just had some minor technical things left, like adding a cable relief and a lamp holder. I also decided to add these 2 walls here to protect the cable. And you might be thinking, protect the cable from what? Well, I'm gonna fill the bottom with some plaster. So something I've noticed with 3D printed lamps is that they are lightweight. And this is both a perk and a drawback. As someone who uses a 3D printed lamp every day, it's not a huge deal, but more weight in the base is definitely preferred. More weight means more stability, and it's less prone to falling, and thus it's a more secure lamp overall. Also, heavy things usually feels like they are of better quality. Now, this is a sturdy lamp with a low profile, so it's not really needed, but I wanted to experiment with this technique and test it out so I can apply it for future projects. I measured the bottom surface, and with some quick maths, thanks ChatGPT, we should expect to add maybe 170 grams, which is about the weight of your smartphone. It's not much, but it's also not nothing. Hopefully, it makes a little bit of a difference. But for now, let's print. Wow, look at this finish. This is some good stuff. So this is the power of matte black PLA together with a very small jitter in the G-code, also called fuzzy skin. And with all that, you get this very nice matte looking finish, and you can't even see the layer lines. However, if we look closely, we can see that there are actually 2 finishes here. So we have one that is more matte and one that is more glossy. And this is simply due to a change of speed. So the top part here ran a little bit slower than the bottom part here. The faster the printer goes, the less time the filament has to cool down, which is why we get this slight variation in finish. When I do the actual version, I will probably run it very slow because I like this matte finish. But before we get to that, let's look at what we have printed so far. So we have printed a few things so far. We have the base, we have a small part of the lampshade, we have a lid, and then we have a bunch of screws. And I'm gonna try and assemble everything and just make sure that all the screws fit nicely. I'm going to try and keep it straight and then screw in the screw. I think it's pretty straight right now. That looks pretty good. And now the lid. Alright, so everything seemed to fit just perfect. And that pleases me a lot. Now it's very hard to see how this is gonna look with the actual bulb and everything. I'm currently printing the big lampshade, like everything. So we'll test that, but I think it's gonna look good. Maybe if we can go like this. Okay. I'm just trying to explore how this gap is gonna look. As it looks right now, I think it's too small. And the effect is... I mean, the effect works, but I just think it's too dim. But yeah, maybe. We can kind of start to see something here, right? So this bottom part, the small light here, it's very subtle, but I like it. I think this is almost like I imagine it. It's just a little bit too dim. But maybe with a light bulb and a diffuser material, maybe it can, we'll see how it looks. So, I did try and create a good diffuser, but I didn't find a safe and satisfying way to install one. So instead, I ended up lowering the walls of the base to increase the gap between the shade and the base, and thus let more of the light escape. But before that, we are actually gonna try and put some weight on this. So I have some plaster and we're gonna fill it up with plaster, and we'll see how much weight we can add. Let's remove some of this. Now, without any added weight, let's see how much the base weighs. 93 grams. So that is very lightweight. This model should be watertight. So I'm thinking we can just mix it up and just pour the plaster in this compartment. And yeah, we'll see if we can add any weight. So the base was watertight, and we had no leaks and no cracks. So this was a huge success. Let's see how much weight we added. 310 grams. That means we have added 217 grams of weight. And that is actually quite a lot. You can definitely feel it. It's definitely noticeable. To put it in perspective, that is about the weight of your smartphone. So it's not a lot, but it's also not nothing. Now all that is left is to assemble everything, and then we are ready to surprise Manny. Let's go.
Tack så mycket. Tack för leveransen. Mycket bra. Wow. Det var intressant.
Ja, det är spännande alltså.
Är det... Ja, det är bordslampan. Lampan med lys.
Ja, den har en baksida och en framsida. Det är det.
Det här är framsidan.
Det här är baksidan och sidan. Så egentligen det här är som en sån här hörnlampa. Alltså, så egentligen ska den vara liksom...
Men jag ska ju kunna ha den där. Så kan jag ha den på det kul. Det är typ perfekta stället att ha den.
Kör. Du måste ha den där nära dock.
Ja, nu byter den för. Och när jag måste ju ta slut på lampan direkt alltså. Riktigt sjuk.
So Manny's initial reaction was a bit exaggerated. Sure. But when he got to play around with the different colors and when he got a feel for the lamp, he actually seemed to enjoy it quite a lot. I am also quite satisfied. I tried to not take this project too seriously. I mostly wanted to make something fun and unique for Manny's apartment. And I think we definitely succeeded with that.
Alla färger var bra faktiskt. What a great fucking lamp, bro. Like, Frank Adrian is the #1 in the business, man. Buy your lamp from Frank.